Okay, now coming towards the types of the bones. Bones can be divided into different groups depending on their shape, depending upon their composition, and depending on their origin. If we talk about their density, the bones could be classified into spongy bone and the compact bone. So this is basically the texture. If the bone is porous, this is called a spongy bone that consists of open interlacing framework of the body tissue, and it's oriented to give strength. And compact bone is the dense that the open framework of the spongy bone has been filled by an additional calcium source, right? किसी भी बॉन्ड फॉर्मेशन के प्रोसेस में पहले बॉन्ड स्पॉन्जी होती है, स्पॉन्जी बनती है और फिर उसके बाद उसमें एक्स्ट्रा कैल्शियम कार्बोनेट डिपॉजिट होते जाते हैं एंड दैट बिकम्स कॉम्पैक्ट बोन. And these two types of the bones exist simultaneously within one bone. Like if you see this femur or humerus bone, this you can see the edges. There's in the middle there are all the spongy bone, but the corners or the surfaces or the walls of that bone, they are compact to give extra strength. So if we compare these two types of the bones, compact bones are solid, relatively dense, and it forms the solid external walls. Spongy bones is the porous like a sponge, and it houses the red bone marrow. The flat bones in the skull, the spongy bone is called diploid. It is sandwiched between two layers of the compact bones. We will explain this term when we reach to the bone formation, intramembranous bone formation. So types of the bone depending on the origin. So intramembranous bone are those bones which are formed in the embryonic forms, embryonic cells, or in the fetus from those germ layers. Right, so इनका कोई background मतलब कोई भी cartilaginous template available नहीं होता, and they are formed as bone. So like the skull bone, clavicle bone, or the dermal bone, they are all intramembranous bones. Endochondral bones are those bones which are first developed in the fetus as cartilage, and then that cartilage is calcified to become a bone. Those are called endochondral bones, and the other name is also for the replacement bones. ठीक है, so जो भी legs के axial skeleton के जो bones हैं in the fetus, they are initially cartilage. जब बच्चा born birth होती है baby की, so their bones are very soft because they are not fully calcified. They still have some cartilaginous parts, and as they grow in age, those cartilages are calcified to become compact bones. Then depending on the shape of the bones, it could be flat bone, irregular bones, short bones, or long bones. Long bones are the most common type of this bone shape. On the right you can see this is a long bone from the leg. So they have two ends, the distal and proximal. So I hope you know the difference between proximal and distal word. So proximal is something which is attached to the joint, and distal is something which is away from the joint, right? So this part is the proximal, and this part is the distal, because this is in that pelvic ball and socket joint, and this attaches to the knee. Right, so these two edges are called epiphyses, and the middle part of the bone or the shaft of the bone is called diaphysis. So long bones are called long bones because they have a higher ratio of their length as compared to their width. So they are always long, elongated bones. But it does not mean that long bones are always visibly long. Even in the bones in the finger pores, in your digits, they are all long bones. The tubular shaft of the compact bone that surrounds the medullary cavity is called diaphysis, and during growth periods it contains the red bone marrow, and in adults that red bone marrow is replaced by the yellow bone marrow. The epiphyses are the expanded ends of the long bones that are separated from diaphysis by a cartilaginous plate that we call epiphyseal growth plate. So that helps in the growth of the bones. This is what we have explained in the last class somewhere where I drawn a few images. Okay. The short bones is the second type. They have the length nearly equal to their width and mostly in the carpal and metacarpal, like in your wrist. And all most of these bones are short bones. Similarly, sesamoid bones, which are tiny, seed-shaped bones along the tendons of some muscles, are also classified as short bones. Sesamoid bones वो होती हैं जो कि bones embedded होती हैं within the muscles और within the tendons और उन पॉइंट्स पे जहाँ पे फ्रिक्शन होगी वहाँ से बचने के लिए ताकि टेंडन्स डैमेज ना हो वो बोन वहाँ पे एम्बेड होती है एक्स्ट्रा स्ट्रेंथ के लिए दैट आर कॉल्ड सेसमोइड बोन्स एंड वन ऑफ द कॉमनेस्ट एग्जांपल इज patella that is the kneecap that kneecap is a free moving bone which is embedded within the ligaments of the knee joint, right? So they are not attached to the other bones. Then the flat bones, these are the bones which are flat, have thin surfaces and have very minimum amount of porous bones. They're mostly compact. Okay? And they are mostly formed at the time of the fetal development from the embryonic membranes. And the fourth one is the irregular bones, and any type of the bone which cannot be classified as long bone, short bone, or the flat bone, we can put them in this category, that is irregular bones. These are such bones that have complex shapes and do not fit in other categories, like the vertebrae, ossa coxae, and several bones in the skull, such as the ethmoid and sphenoid bones, are irregular bones. Right? So you see the complex structures of these bones. So they cannot be categorized in other groups, and they have their specific functions.